Hello and welcome to Topic Tuesday. Our first topic comes from Jason T. Gray Music. Jason writes, "Love this format. Here's my question for the next Topic Tuesday. How do you integrate the Taekwondo techniques that aren't allowed in sparring into your overall fight style? We learn the movements of spinning elbows, knees, leg kicks, etc., but there's obviously neglect in practice." Good question, Jason. So, with any technique that you want to make reliable, you need to take it through what I call the training trinity. Step one of the trinity is simply to understand how to do the technique, getting the biomechanics down. Step two is to drill the technique in the context you want it to function in. As an example, if you're learning a front leg roundhouse kick, you might want to use that in your Taekwondo sparring. One way that you could drill that for the context of Taekwondo sparring is have someone hold a clapper paddle and just walk around a sparring ring so that you can practice moving in and out and striking the target, doing it with some footwork. That's one way of drilling it in context. Now, in this second phase of the trinity, you can increase or decrease complexity as needed. There's many ways you can make that drill as close to the real thing as possible if you're more advanced. Then finally, you want to actually practice the technique in the setting you're working on performing it in this case, Taekwondo sparring. So outside of Taekwondo sparring, you want to identify first what the context is that you want your technique to work in. Is it self-defense? And for example, what does that self-defense situation look like? Is it being mobbed by 3 people? That will then inform how you do that second phase of the trinity. But any technique you want to make reliable needs to go through those 3 things in order to know for sure that you can do it in a live and stressful situation. Now, if you only keep a technique in Tier 1 or Phase 1, it's not useless. It's better than not knowing anything at all. It just simply hasn't gone through the rigorous work of being made reliable. I'll give you an example. I have a black belt in the style of Aikido. And in Aikido, most teachers and students keep the techniques in Tier 1 only. So you get very good at the mechanics of the techniques, but you have no sense of how to use them in a live situation. Now, if I try to take a technique from Aikido like the outward wrist turn and try to use it against someone who's throwing boxing punches at me, well, the technique probably isn't going to be very useful because it was never intended to be used against something like that in the first place. When you're cranking on the wrist and turning it outward, it's really quite handy against someone who's armed when you're trying to seize control of the weapon hand and either disarm them or just control that hand so they can't hurt you with it. If you practice inside of that context, and so you design your Tier 2 drills around that, and then practice your live training where someone's basically just trying to stab you, then you'll make that technique much more reliable and really just useful for you. Hope that helps. Take it through the training trinity. Let's move on to the next topic. This one is from Steve Carp 3325. Steve writes, "Master Paul, I'd like to suggest a topic for Topic Tuesday. Would you mind speaking about the importance and role that respect and uniforms play in Taekwondo? Folks not acquainted with traditional martial arts practices might not understand the role that facing others and bowing, speaking clearly to masters, belts, training in your dobok, etc., plays in studying and training Taekwondo." Thank you. That's a good question, Steve. I think to address this question properly, it might be beneficial to first explain what the modern theory of the mind is. This is based on ideas from people like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. And the theory goes that there are at least 2 parts of the mind, the conscious and unconscious mind. You can think of the conscious mind like a light. Imagine you're in a house that's dark, and you shine the light on a Bookcase. Now you see the bookcase. Now you're aware of the bookcase. You can think about the bookcase. You can note its color. And then as soon as you take that light and shine it somewhere else, you're no longer aware of that bookcase, but it's not gone. It still exists. The house is all still there, even if the light of your conscious mind doesn't see it. Now, it's believed that the unconscious plays a big role in our behavior and our emotions. And again, it communicates in the form of symbols and images, not logic and language. That's the conscious mind. And so I think cultures have understood this for a long time. They've used symbols, rituals, all of these different things to communicate with that half of the mind, the unconscious mind. Now, how is this used in martial arts? Let's look at 3 examples. Let's start with the uniform. The uniform, the dobok, is white. What does white usually mean in terms of symbols? Purity, innocence, a new journey, like a blank slate, cleanliness. All of these things are beneficial concepts to a martial arts student. It sets the mind for the training. Let's look at the bowing. What does it mean to bow to someone or something? To lower yourself in space. This is a symbol of humility. And so when you bow onto the training floor, when you bow to a partner, you are humbling yourself. Once again, this symbol is going to communicate to your unconscious mind. And a student who is humble is more receptive to learning. A student who is humble is a better training partner, a safer person to work with. So just as in the cleanliness, the purity of white being beneficial to the mindset of a student, so is humbleness beneficial to the mindset of a student. Let's look at belts. I put the camera here so you can see some of the belts in our system. Now, belts are a symbol of a hierarchy, so right away you know your place in the hierarchy and sort of your place in your martial arts journey. And there's definitely a sense of achievement when you go through the ritual of a belt promotion. That's a symbol of progress. Once again, communicating to your unconscious that you are making progress in the training. But further, each belt holds specific symbolism. Now, I'm sure this varies from school to school, but I can talk about some general symbols in the belts in our system, and this is written in the textbook that we use. So white belt, much like the white uniform, represents like an innocence, a purity, and a freshness or new start. So this is the beginning of a person's martial art journey. And you can think of this like a snowfall in the new year. When the snow falls on everything, it's all blanketed in white. It's not dirtied. There's no sense of that gunk on anything. It's just pure. Then, as the sun comes out and melts the snow, the water sinks into the ground and allows a seed to begin to grow. That is the symbol of the yellow belt in our system. Yellow is the sun and its warmth. Green is the spring, so that seed has now sprouted and it symbols growth in the student. Brown is fall and maturity. And then red is like summer and heat and excitement. You're nearing the black belt, and it represents danger. Black is when you combine all the colors together. You can't add any other colors to it to make it better. It is the unity of all of the colors, and it's the color of respect. It's like everything that you've learned culminating into one place. And it's interesting, too, that you start as a 10th gup, a white belt, and then you work your way to first gup, and you sort of die and are reborn as a black belt. This is then symbolized with the first dan. You're no longer starting again at the 10th level, but at the first level, and then you work your way back up to 10. I think that does have a benefit on the student's mindset. Once again, that's the goal of all of these different symbols in the training. It's to create a martial art mindset, or really to foster it in the student. And it's not just traditional martial arts that uses symbolism like this, it's all over. Just look at the military. Symbols are a common tool used to keep a practitioner of a particular craft in the right headspace. So, very good question, and I personally love the symbolism of the traditional martial arts for these reasons. Let's move on to the next question. This is from Invest in Rose Gold, who has a lovely pineapple conure photo for their profile picture. So I have an idea for Topic Tuesday. Why do people confuse Taekwondo with karate? Every time I do a cool kick in front of people, they say, "Nice karate kick." Even my grandparents think I do karate when I do Taekwondo. Thank you, Invest in Rose Gold. Is it inaccurate to call Taekwondo karate? Let's break down what karate means. In its traditional form, the way that it was written when it was in Okinawa, it means way of the Chinese hand. If you write this in Korean, it would be written the same way. It would be pronounced Tang Su Do. Just pointing out that the origins of the techniques come from China. Now, this is just as true of Taekwondo techniques as it is karate techniques. They're the same foundational set of techniques. Taekwondo comes from the same family of training and techniques as karate. It's the same genesis point. So I think you could accurately call the techniques of Taekwondo karate using that old translation. Now, the more modern translation used in Japan for karate is empty hand. I think that also fits for Taekwondo. It's referring to the empty-handed techniques of the martial art. And the techniques of Taekwondo are virtually identical to the techniques of karate. In fact, if you look at the Shuri line of karate, styles like Shorin-ryu, Shotokan, these styles are much more similar to Taekwondo in terms of the techniques practiced, the forms practiced. They're much more similar to Taekwondo than they are to the techniques of other karate styles like the Naha styles, such as Uechi-ryu and Goju-ryu. So Taekwondo is really just a style of an older karate system. It's an offshoot. And the name Taekwondo wasn't added until very recently in history, sometime around the 1950s. And it didn't even gain popularity until closer to like the 70s. In fact, my instructor came to the United States in the 1970s, and he called what he did Korean karate at the time. And Korean karate is an accurate description of what Taekwondo is. So what I would say is, if you call something karate, there are all different styles of karate as well. There's Shorin-ryu, Shotokan, Wado-ryu, many styles. Calling Taekwondo karate is really no different from calling one of those styles karate. because the differences are minuscule. Now, the other reason people do that is they just tend to call anything that's an Asian martial art karate. So they use it as a broad term. But again, that's not entirely inaccurate if you use the literal translation of that word and consider that most of these martial arts share the same origin point, which is karate. So when people call what I do karate, I tend not to really think about it much at all because really it is all quite similar. I hope that helps. Thank you everyone for these topics. You know the drill. If you'd like me to address another topic, please leave it in the comments and I will put it in the next edition of Topic Tuesday. Until next time.